my presentation, for the most part, going to cover from all the way from the beginning of understanding what you need to know before a game starts through the actual game and from beginning to end. And yes, a complete guide to officiating basketball, but kind of to give you all the beginning information. So when you do get out there, especially for those of you that are relatively new, if not brand new, you're not a deer in the headlights wondering what to do. All right. So let's start with signals. I haven't gotten the new rules book yet, but the old rules book had 39 signals. We're going to go through them all, not one by one, but there's a few signals that I want to, in each category that I want to highlight. We've got starting and stopping the clock, information, shooting and scoring. One signal is the new category for the free throws, violations, and then we've got our fouls. All the signals are important. I would say the fouls are probably the most, then maybe the violations and kind of backward, but they're all important. We use almost all of them all game, so we have to know what each signal is. So let's start with starting and stopping the clock. To start the clock, it's also known as what? Chop the clock. And why do we say chop the clock? In order to start the clock, the proper performance of the starting the clock is like you're chopping wood. Okay, here's an example of a good chop the clock. You see that? They start with their hand above their head, and when they chop it, it's perpendicular to their body. Okay, now if you go all the way down to your leg, that's okay. Nobody's going to say anything. But really, a good, strong-looking signal is like you are chopping wood. When you hit an axe and it hits that wood, does it go beyond the wood? Generally not. It sticks in the wood and stops right where you hit it. That's kind of what you want it to look like. All right? 3 reasons to start the clock. The rules book actually tells us these 3. It's not just this is what we use it for. The rules book says you got to start the clock on a jump ball, on a throw-in, and the last one, on a missed free throw. Here's an example of a jump ball. Starting the clock on a jump ball. Here it is up close, right in front of the bench. Is that chop correct? The ball was tipped to a non-jumper. As soon as the non-jumper grabbed and or touched the ball, the official chopped the clock. Is that correct? The rule tells us, Rule 592, that the play is started or resumed by a jump ball. The clock is started when the tossed ball is legally touched, and it is legally touched when the jumper touches it, correct? One more comment on this video. Anything else in this video, not good. Did White let that ball, the white team let that ball reach the height of its toss? No, that is a violation. And watching these plays, it happens a lot. But that one was bad. And we as officials have to do a better job of not allowing a player to steal that jump, because that's what they did. They didn't let the other team have a chance because he's waiting for it to reach its highest point, right? So I'm just going to take it from you. All right, the next signal is stop the clock. There's 4 reasons. Again, in the rules book, it tells us 4 reasons to stop the clock. Okay, and in a violation and a timeout, we stop the clock, as you can see the little diagram, by putting our arm directly up in the air and open palm. The next one would be held ball. We put our arm up for held ball, and then we give the signal, right? It used to be, for those of us that have officiated for, I think it was maybe 8-10 years ago where they changed this. It used to be you would just give the held ball signal. And now we have to give the stop clock signal with the open palm first, and then the held ball signal. The last reason to stop the clock is a foul. And it is a little different than all the others because instead of an open hand, you have a closed fist. So if you have a foul, you put a fist in the air. All right. Now, before I move on, why is it important that we have an open hand or a fist to distinguish between a violation or a foul or any of the other points? Why is that important? Who are we communicating to? Your partners. Your partners need to know why you're blowing your whistle because they are the ones that are going to help move the game along while you're showing your signals or going to the table or whatever you may do to administer what you just called. Your partners know exactly what's going on. It's important for the coach and the players and the fans, but many of them probably don't even realize what you're doing, but your partners do. And it helps keep the game move along. All right. Bird dogging. Some of us still do it. It is not required. You are still allowed to bird dog, but primarily it's used to distinguish between players when there's multiple players kind of in an area that foul. I have an example for you. All right, so we've got a player driving down into the basket. The primary defender kind of gets beat a little. The secondary defender comes over. It's possible one or the other may have fouled. I can't quite tell, but because there's a possibility, the official comes in and points toward the player just to signify that you're the one who fouled. I would point toward the waist of the player. Try to stay away from the chest and head because it's a little more threatening. But that's about the only time that you really need to bird dog. You don't need to come in when everybody knows who the foul is on. And most of the time everybody already knows, but if you have to, that's when you would bird dog. Okay. Information. All of these signals provide information to those watching the game. The first one being a visible count. And the proper way to count is perpendicular to your body, back and forth, not high up in the air. I know some officials are, well, I'm kind of short. I want them to be able to see my count. I understand that, but everyone can see you counting no matter how tall or short you are. They can see you counting perpendicular to your body. All right. Here is an example of starting a new count. And this is primarily in a closely guarded situation. But if you start a new count, you need to signify to everyone that it's a new count by changing your hand. All right, so the player's moving back and forth, trying to create space. They're closely guarded, so the official starts counting. Then they break that. They go further than 6, and they stop counting. And there's no amount of time in between that you would necessarily say, all right, well, I don't need to change my hand. I mean, if it's 30 seconds later, obviously you can use the same hand because it's long enough. But if it's within the same play, you want to change your hand, especially because if a coach is watching to know if they're being closely guarded and you change hands, they know, oh, it's a new count. Definitely a new count with a new hand. If you use the same hand, if you drop it 3 seconds later, they get picked up again and use the same hand, maybe they weren't watching the whole time and they didn't see you drop your hand and they think that you're still counting. So when you start a new count, make sure that you use a new hand. Everybody understand that concept? Yes? All right. Beckon Subs. This is another one that I see done incorrectly a lot. And you could say, what's the big deal? And I'll tell you what the big deal is. But you see on this little diagram, the full motion of the forearm, back and forth, the full motion of the forearm. Not this with the fingers, It's not a big enough motion to be seen. Sometimes they see it, but sometimes they don't. You want to do the full motion. Here's an example. All right, little fingers. Oh, they didn't see him. Now I'm going to do like a finger wag. It just looks kind of goofy, I think. If you just do the big full motion, you only need to do one arm. The chances of them seeing it, they still may not see it because they're not paying attention. I get that. But they have a much better chance of seeing a big, full sweeping motion than they do just the fingers. Here's another example. Across the court. Okay, now, was the player paying attention? He blew his whistle. He didn't come in, but that's not the point. The point is it looks bad. So in some games, I will say we drop our guard, right? And we start to get a little lazy with our signals. I've done it. We have to try to stay on top of it. As soon as we start getting lazy with signals, then we get lazy with our mind and maybe we miss a call. Maybe we don't see something because we're just not in the right mind. And that's the big difference with a lot of these signals that I'm going to show you. You would say, well, what's the big deal? Everybody knows what I'm doing. Yes, you're right. But the big deal is you're not doing this signal right. You're not doing that signal right. Now you're not thinking properly. Now your whole game is starting to slip because it just takes you out of focus. If you're constantly trying to do things the right way, the proper way, it keeps you on the level. That makes sense. All right, 60-second timeout, real quick. You put your hands together and you spread them out, both perpendicular to your body. And I want you to take a close look. The 60-second timeout has open hands. Okay? It's not closed fists, which I see a lot. What is this signal? This is a double foul. Now, I realize you're reporting a timeout. Everybody knows it's a timeout. Nobody thinks it's a double foul. But what if there's a situation where somebody does think it's a double foul? If you constantly do it that way, you might put yourself in a position you don't want to be in. So just don't do it. Tipped ball. When do we use the tip ball signal? Well, first, how do we do it? It's just like you hit your fingers like the ball went off your fingers. We've been doing it for years. They added this signal, 5-6 years ago, maybe longer. But there's a specific reason when to do this signal. It's for backcourt information only. Okay? If there is a blocked shot, the kid shoots and then he blocks them and we don't have a whistle or a foul because they blocked it clean, we're not given this signal for a good block shot. Here is a correct way to use the signal.
He'll be on his feet. There he is, back up where he belongs. Next coach, sport coach.
Watch the center official at the bottom of the screen. All right. That signal is for whose benefit? Primarily for his partner, because he has information that ball was tipped that his partner may not have seen, who is in charge of that backcourt line. And if that backcourt line, if he sees it go over there and thinks it's a backcourt, he's going to blow his whistle. And then you got to get together and say, no, it was tipped. And it just gets messy. So to avoid that altogether and keep play from going, or to keep play from stopping, we give the signal so they can see it. It's also for the benefit of the coaches who are thinking that that's a backcourt violation. But if they see a nice big motion, the coaches even see, oh, the ball was tipped, and then they won't yell at you because they see that it wasn't a backcourt. Okay? Here's an example of when not to do the signal. Okay, we got a foul on this play, but if you watch the lead, and I'm going to split the screen here so you can see. If you watch the lead, what is the lead doing? Wait a second, was it a block shot or was it a foul? You've got one official calling a foul and one official calling a block shot. Now, obviously, if something like this happens, you go with the foul. You can't say it wasn't a foul if your partner said it was. But it sure makes it messy. And now one coach can say, but he said it was clean. How can you see it? Especially the guy who was 30 feet away is now saying it's a foul, and the guy who was 5 feet away is saying it wasn't. As a coach, I'm going to use that, because how could you possibly see that he was right there? You know what I'm saying? So if you stop giving that signal for a block shot for that purpose alone, it could eliminate a headache that could possibly happen. Everybody understand that? Yes? All right, flopping. We're not going to talk too much about the rule, but the signal, as we are all aware from last year, is an extension. You start up toward your face with your both hands, palms facing you, and then you lay your arms straight out. Okay? The IHSA has suggested or directed, I don't know what word you want to use, to do it, if you have a flopping call, to do it 2 or 3 times. More than once. Don't do it more than 3. I think 2 is a good number, but they want it more than once. That way everyone sees that you're calling the flop. Here is an example of a flop signal. Player goes up, lands, and just throws his legs out. Clearly a flop. The official only does it once. Probably better to do it twice. That way we make sure everybody sees, the video sees, if you have to go back, they had a flop call. Okay? Let's move on to shooting and scoring, which is the next category. A few of the signals I like to talk about are the 3-point attempt and made. They've combined this signal into one signal, even though it really is 2 different signals. When there's a 3-point attempt, we use 3 fingers out to the side above, right? It's not an open hand. It's not a closed hand. It's 3 fingers. 3 fingers for 3-point attempt. Very logical. All right. It's also at a 45-degree angle from your body. Nice and high and out away, so it is separated from your head. You don't want to be out this way, not way up at top. Okay. You want to be at 45, as close to 45 as you can. When they make a 3-point attempt, we put our hands, both of our hands, above our head, right? Like a field goal in football. Everybody knows this signal. What do we see with the hands? How are they positioned? Palms are facing inward. Okay? It's not hands up like this. This to me looks like, hey, don't shoot, don't shoot. Okay? It's not 2, 3 fingers in the air. And I've seen this before, and that kind of feels like maybe you could, because you start with 3 fingers, so you just bring them up with 3 fingers, but it is hands up, palms inward. If you think about holding a box above your head every time you do this signal, you're going to get it right. Because unless you're extremely talented, you can't hold a big box like this with anything other than the palms of your hand. All right. You also want to make sure that they're straight up. For the most part, vertical from your body. You don't want to be out like touchdown Jesus. Okay, you don't want 3 fingers out there or above your head. Hands up, palms inward. Here is a good example of a 3-point attempt and make. All right, so I'm going to show that one more time because it's perfect. And this is not a hard signal or group of signals to do. And I don't know why people do it wrong, if they think they look cooler or what, but just do it the right way. All right. Let's move on to violations. These are a little more fun. We're skipping over the free throws because that's just showing the fingers of how many free throws there are. Everybody can do that. I want to talk about traveling. Okay, the proper way to give the traveling signal is 2 or 3 rotations of the arms. Okay, you're not going to go super fast. You're not going to go super slow. And you're not going to do more than 3. If you do more than 3, it looks like you're, I don't know, churning butter, or it just looks weird. Again, you're putting too much effort into it. Another thing I want you to look at, we've got fists that move around each other. Okay, it's not an open hand. Even though we stop the clock with an open hand, we don't bring the open hands then in and move them around. And I've seen this multiple times, and it looks weird. Okay. And all of these things, again, in the grand scheme of things, is it a big deal? No. But they all cumulatively add up to what could just bring your game or keep your game from rising to a newer level. So if you just do it the right way, you're going to look better. You'll probably end up feeling better. And unfortunately, those of you, I don't think anyone would disagree, more than 50% of what we do out there is perception. How we are perceived plays more into it than actually what we are calling. You could call the wrong call and look really good, and no one will say anything because you look really good. You could make the right call and look not really good, and you're going to get chewed up and spit out. I've seen it time and time again. The backcourt signal is a full back and forth with the hand. And again, online, it's not as good to show, but if you don't have a full back and forth, what could this signal look like? A little bit smaller of the wrist, like a carry or palming, right? So if you do a big from the back to the front, when I perform a backcourt violation signal, I literally point in the backcourt to the front court. You want to do it, you don't have to do it 2 times, but do it 2 times. It gives it a little more emphasis, but it's a nice, if you're pointing to pointing, a nice big motion for the backcourt. It's also, which is why it's on this slide, it's also been added to that new rule. Was it last year or was it a couple years ago maybe? No, it was a couple years ago. Where if a player runs out of bounds of their own volition and comes back onto the court, remember that it's no longer a violation to run out of bounds. They can run back, but if they're the first to touch the ball, then it would be a violation. And they want us to use this backcourt signal to signify that violation. Okay? All right. Real quick. In this situation here, the ball hits the player and goes into the backcourt. The official signals the backcourt violation. Where does the throw-in go? In this particular situation right here, where would we put the throw-in? The first thing we need to know is who's going to get the ball on the ensuing throw-in, the offense or the defense? Hopefully the offense always gets the ball. So if the offense is going to get the ball, are they going to be in their front court or their back court? Their front court. And if there's a throw-in in the front court, where does a throw-in go? 28-foot mark. Okay, so on a backcourt violation, as long as that ball is touched above the 3-point line, it's always going to go to the 28-foot mark. If you have a scenario like this, it goes into the backcourt and they touch the ball first right here in the paint. Where is the throw-in going to go? It'll go to the end line to the 3-foot mark on one side or the other. I generally like to put it on the side that they're closest to, but it really doesn't matter. Just pick a side and put it at the 3-foot mark. All right. Kicking violation. We all know this signal. This has been a signal for 15 so years now. We've all been doing it for longer, but they added it. We have to remember that the kick violation is only when it is intentionally kicked. So just because the ball hits the foot or the leg does not make it a kicking violation, right? It has to be intentional. Here's an example.
People that do it. It's just such a great thing for Fox Valley basketball.
Most certainly, tipped ball stays with.
Kickball or not a kickball? Not a kick ball. It definitely hit his foot, but he was simply standing there. In fact, I don't think he even knew the ball was being passed to him. He was waiting for him to put up a shot and get the rebound. The ball hit his foot, does not make it a kicking violation because he did not intentionally kick the ball. All right. I got lots of videos to show that, but we're going to keep moving. All right. There is a sequence that we need to give every time we blow our whistle for a violation. The sequence goes stop the clock, right? With the hand up in the air with open palm. Then you give the signal of the violation, whatever it is, if it's traveling or carry or backcourt, whatever that is, you give that signal. You point the direction that the ball is going to go, and then you point to the spot where the throw-in is going to occur. Those 4 things need to occur every time you blow your whistle for a violation. All right, official blew their whistle, stopped the clock, gave a carry signal, which was the violation, pointed the direction the ball is going to go, and then to the spot where the throw-in is going to be. That's perfect. My only critique is you don't need to be walking away from the play while you're doing it. Stand still. Everybody is watching you. And I know sometimes, again, we get a little lazy or we get into it. Sometimes we get excited with our call. Stand there. Do all your signals while you're stationary, and then you can move away from your spot. Okay? All right, lastly, on the signals, fouls. These are important because if you don't give the proper signal for what happened, good coaches, not all coaches do this, but the good ones actually try to coach their kids as to what they did wrong so they don't do it wrong again. And if you give every signal, every time you blow your whistle, if you just give the block signal, even though maybe they hacked them or they ran them over or whatever may happen, if you just give a block, that coach can't properly instruct their kids to change their behavior. So it is very important that we use the proper signal as to what happened. All right. Now there's a few I want to point out. Illegal use of the hands. All right. Now, I don't believe the signal has any motion arrows, but it's generally you'll hit one arm on top of the other, but you want to have it down low by your waist area, because if you have it higher, what could it possibly look like? An intentional foul, right? You cross your arms for an intentional foul above your head. So the higher you do a illegal use of the hand signal, the more it may look like an intentional foul. So try to avoid that. Other thing I want to point out is it is not an open hand. It is a closed fist. The signal used to be, for those of us that has been working long enough, it used to be an open hand, and they changed it to a closed fist. It's just stronger looking. It looks better. So make sure you have a closed fist. Holding and hand check. 2 other signals that look very similar, do they not? So when you give a hold signal, you want your arm up and you're grabbing your arm and you're holding your own arm from extending away from you. That's how I think about it. I'm holding my arm. I'm not letting my arm go. For a hand check, you're going to extend your arm out as if you want to touch the player, hand check the player, and you put your hand around your wrist, but you're reaching out with your hand. You're giving a what looks like a hand check. Everyone understands the difference, yes? If there is a hand check, don't call a hold because you don't believe in the hand check foul. Give a hand check signal. If you give 1 or 2 hand checks in a game, I guarantee you they start to go away. Not always, but many times. These coaches, in fact, I get yelled at more for not calling a hand check now ever since 10 years ago when maybe longer, when they pounded into us, than if I don't call a hand check. It just stops the touching and the pushing and it doesn't always, but. Okay. Block. Hands on your hips. A lot of people like to use the fists. It's not the fists. That to me is less important as long as you have a good, strong signal. I want to give you an example of what not to do when you give a block signal. Don't flap your arms like a bird. Now, I know this official is trying to sell the call, trying to make everyone know I've got the call, it's a block. But when you do it over and over and over, to me, it just looks goofy. And I'm going to say, if you got to sell it that hard, maybe it wasn't. Instead, I'd rather see a signal look like this. Did you see that? Nice up, one motion. You can start up at your head and come down. One motion, nice and strong, swift. It just looks cleaner. It looks more confident. It looks more decisive. Do we agree or no? All right, so when you call a foul, every time you call a foul, you are to give a preliminary sequence, just like a violation. You're going to first stop the clock, as we talked about initially, with your fist in the air. You're going to then give the signal of the foul, whatever it is, push, illegal use of the arm, whatever. You're going to point the direction the ball is going to go and where the ball is going to be put in play. Or if it's a shooting foul, it would be the subsequent action that's going to happen. All right. When you're after your preliminary signal, you then need to report that signal to the table. This is the official report so they can put it in the book and record what happened. In order to do that, we first must go to the foul reporting area. We as officials overall do a terrible job of going to the foul reporting area. It's a large area on the court. There's no reason why we can't. You just got to get to the edge. You don't have to go all the way to the middle. You don't have to go all the way to the front, wherever you're closest, just to the edge. And why is it important that we get to the foul reporting area? What does that matter? It ensures that you are right in front of the table for them to see you without anyone in their way. The coaches also have a good view of what you're reporting. If you report from the end line because it's whatever kind of you're saving steps or it's a quick player control, you want to go the other way, most of the time you're reporting through players. Someone may not see what you're reporting. Don't be lazy. Go to the foul reporting area and report it. Okay. So you get to the foul reporting area. You're first going to report the color of the team that fouled. Then you're going to report the number of the player that fouled. You're going to give the signal of what the player did to foul, the direction, again, that the ball is going, and the subsequent action. So if it's out of bounds or if it's two shots or whatever it may be.